Welcome to Parenting Vanessa Clone's podcast. All right, just a little bit about me. I'm a family interventionist. I have started the school, a nonprofit that is a K through 8, which specializes in social emotional learning, which is KFS school, along with the 3R method that works on self-regulation and body awareness, along with the social emotional learning that builds on the relationships of the child and whoever they're working with, parent or teacher. And I just have a lot to offer when it comes to interventions with kids of all ages. And it's really important for me that people have more tools in the toolkit when it comes to parenting. All right, welcome to Parenting with Vanessa Cologne. Today we have this amazing guy from New York. I don't know if you want to just open up and just give a little background about yourself, JopauL. So you have,
All right, basically,
I also want to mention he does have his own podcast. I'm verified. Am I correct?
it's the verified podcast. I mean, this is more like, like I'm verified, just like, creates a statement when I go into public. They're like, oh, who are you? I'm like, and then that's usually it. No, I'm kidding. I go by the name of JopauL, New York music artist, Jewish activist. I hate to use the word influencer because I know it just sounds so stupid nowadays. So, I mean, if I do influence anybody, great. I'm not set out to really influence people, more make you raise your eyebrow and, question certain things that you've learned in the past, question things that, you might have been taught by some people that you hold in, real high regard. And it's not always a bad thing to question what you thought was an authority figure that turned out to be some bullshit. So that's me in a nutshell. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so I did a little bit of research on you last night because that was what I do before, I go to sleep. Think of you, and I'm like, what is this guy doing and talking about? So you are a huge history buff.
She's flirting already. She thinks about me before she goes to sleep, and she's admitting it. You guys all see it.
All right, no, but well, it was true because I was like, okay, who is this person? And then you kind of got me going this deep dive, and that I learned a lot. And so this is kind of what
tell me about me.
Tell me about you. All right, so let me think. So where did this whole passion for history come in?
Okay, so I guess that's
like really, because I mean that's a I don't. There's not a lot of people that the amount of knowledge that you were able to like put out in the last like 6 months. You got me going.
I'm glad. I mean, and I hope you were entertained in the process because what I like to do is, I mean, being in the entertainment industry for the past 25 years, I like to use a little bit of my, I guess, from a Jewish perspective, you'd call it chutzpah, to kind of, keep you engaged with the different things that I've learned and kind of relate it to what we're dealing with now. How I kind of got involved or started with it. I mean, it's just an intriguing story. I'm a writer, by trade. I write for different artists and different genres. And I was writing for an artist from Iraq, an artist from India, and an artist from Lebanon. And all of them knew that I was Jewish, and they were all cool with it. So I needed to kind of research their story or their history to kind of, put some cool things, into their songs and, make it really personal to them. And also, that's how I get paid. So, it shows my due diligence that I didn't just say, okay, yeah, the cat, and the hat. I like to get a little bit more intricate than just that. So right. In the process of doing that, that area, which is, known as, the Mesopotamia region, or from ancient times or the Abrahamic lands, I started learning about like the tribes of David and the ancient Judeans and the Maccabees and the Jewish revolt. And I was like, this is some intriguing shit. And I'm always, I grew up in the 80s, big fan of like Indiana Jones and, all those, movies about history and stuff. And all of us wanted to be an archaeologist, back in the day, and, the Temple of Doom, and especially trying to find the Holy Grail. So really it was writing for these artists that I discovered my own history, that because back when I started in the hip hop industry, it was never about like, oh, promote that you're Jewish, because the myth was, oh, the Jews run the entertainment industry. So if you get on because of that, then it means that you're not valid in hip hop. And obviously, I don't know if you could tell, but, my skin is of a paler complexion, so in an industry that was dominated by people of color. So it was like you needed to kind of walk on eggshells. So the whole being Jewish was never brought out. I mean, people knew that I was, but I never really promoted it like that. So my whole love of history, really was on the back burner. It was on the back end of things, and I just used it for my writing. And then one thing led to another, and I'm like, wow, we got ourselves into our own mess. And you probably wonder what I mean by that.
Yeah, I'm gonna keep.
Okay, so
I actually got my question next.
well, I'll keep going. So what I mean by
No,
that is
please do.
we got ourselves in our own mess. There's a very profound Jewish saying that people usually say around the holiday times, and to kind of skip all the all the four questions and the prayers over the wine, and we say they tried to kill us, we survived, let's eat. Very, very profound Jewish statement, which basically sums up
Right.
our story. But also, it's also probably to be credited with why we're in this mess. Because while we teach ourselves and talk about our own history amongst ourselves only during the holiday time, and we're kind of in the mood to eat, we don't really want to, like, okay, who wants to do the four questions? And, let's learn about, let's
Right.
eat the bitter herbs. And, even with Pesach, coming soon, I have to, announce that. But the world doesn't know our story. They have no idea. All they know is these pale faced, what they have been taught to be privileged, born with a silver spoon people that have populated the entire world in strategic positions of power that are secretly making sure we can dominate the world. And by
Yeah.
the way, I got word from the Illuminati. The space lasers will be ready soon.
Oh, thanks for letting me know. I've been waiting for that one. I've
Okay, make sure
definitely.
you edit this out. Okay?
I will. Okay. No, it's very true. And I also think that a lot of people, they're talking about, I want to also talk about what's happening in colleges too. So there's a couple topics I want to go about this. And I feel like there is this place right now where, especially being a Jew, that we're not feeling safe, right, to have these conversations and with others. So it's like we talked about earlier about a kid coming into my school and they're like, I hate this one president. And then the other kid saying, I hate this president too. And yet now there's an argument in my school because obviously two families have two different sides and where they want to vote.
For context, how old are these kids?
9 and 10, which is like,
Can we go back to the days of, let's not talk about religion or political affiliation?
but I mean,
Like,
but this is also a good learning opportunity, right? But this is a good, like, well, why is it? Let's start teaching like the people like critical thinking skills. Like, where are you going to get this information? How are you able to like, and I also don't, I think that people don't understand that parents, like, if they have these opinions and they have this hate, I mean, look at social media. There's a couple nights where I've just gone through and looking at what comments from people and looking and like, oh my God, that person is a parent. And just the hate and the spew. And I'm like, when did this become okay? And then it's like, oh, like we're being accused of all these things and all this misinformation. I'm like, where's this misinformation coming from? And you had a good couple points earlier. So like, can you want to explain a little bit on this? Because it's very difficult right now.
let's see,
And
where do I start? There's no real place to start. We'll just kind of attack it, how we see it. So I think a large portion of the responsibility, and not to take it away from the teachers, because my mother was a teacher for 45 years, so I have a certain love for teachers, and she was a language teacher, taught, advanced Latin, and like super smart, like, spoke 5 languages, and I had a lot to measure up to. Let's just put it that way. So the fact that I have this knowledge of history, like I could almost beat her in Jeopardy. Almost. She's still one ahead of me. But I feel like a large portion of the responsibility is going to fall on the parents of how to
100%.
conduct themselves in a social setting. I mean, yes, you could have your political views, but that should not mean that the opposition is your enemy. The whole idea of free speech and, this country is that everyone can have their right to have their own opinion, but not when it becomes sort of slanderous and dangerous. And yes, I can understand. I'm not going to try to lean one side or not, because the divisiveness, going on right now is just out of control. But yes, you're going to have certain political leaders that say certain things that are nuts. You also are going to have certain leaders that are going to say stuff that might seem incoherent, but You have to look beyond the surface. You have to look at the messaging that is coming from a broader perspective. No matter what they say, the media on the left and the media on the right are going to spin it so they can get clicks. It's virtual clickbait. You're going to be sucked into the story because they want you to watch it, not for the value of the information that they're giving.
Right.
Does
But then
that make sense?
no, it totally does. But what I'm finding is that people are looking for TikTok and other things for information where it's like there's a lot of misinformation coming, right? For example, just numbers on just, the hospital from a couple months ago. And it's like, then within time it comes out later, but it's almost like, well, I already heard the first story. I'm not going to go back and look at it. And so then you have this, you're just jaded in the way that you're thinking things. And I just feel like it's actually very scary right now if you will not go back and do more research on why it is.
Well, here's the thing. I mean, so I'll sum it up like this, and I hate to use it as an example, but it's the perfect example that I could lead. It's like if you were going for Trump the entire time, and then you see all of these court cases and indictments and criminal proceedings, and you see all the things that the media is saying about him. It's like even if you start to realize that, wait, maybe that's not the guy I want to run the country. And I could say the same thing about Biden, with stuff that he does. I'm just Trump was the first thing. He was what I was watching on the news
Right.
before we got on. Um, so it's like once you're invested or vested in a certain direction, pride and ego doesn't really allow you to do that. And society has made us like that. We've went from a society of I'm sorry, I was wrong. I didn't see it from that perspective to fuck it. I don't got to explain myself. Yeah, nah. It is what it is. What are you gonna do about it? Like, yeah.
Well, that's also
And that's how nothing gets accomplished. I like to open up dialogue, to anybody to kind of debate. Unfortunately, it's a little one-sided if unless I know that they have actually like done some research and have the knowledge of. I'm not trying to say that like, oh, look how big my intellect is. It's not like that. It's just I've done the research. I know what history actually is, and I know how to combat the fake you know distortion of what they believe history is. So
right.
it's a weird world out there, but a large portion is going to fall on the parents to kind of guide their kids into, listen, you're 9, you don't need to worry about politics right now. But if somebody speaks to you about it, say, hey, I'd rather talk about skipping stones and butterflies rather than, if Trump is going to build a wall or be a dictator on the first day of his presidency. I mean, just let kids be kids,
No,
but
I do agree with
but
that,
it's
but yeah,
unavoidable.
I think we're past. I mean, I think we're at a time where it's like my mom would have like, okay, when the lights come on outside, like come back inside. Like it wasn't. I mean, there's so much addiction to the phones, and that's what I'm saying. All this misinformation, and how do you decipher between what's real and what's not, and then all the anti-Semitism that's happening. You know,
Honestly, parents need to beat their kids more. No, I'm totally kidding. I'm totally kidding.
I was
you,
all,
yeah, you use that as a bite, for when you clip this up. You're like, look at what this kid said.
I was like, well, that the research shows that. No, I just, it's just, it's a question of like, how do we, teach more about the history of Judaism, in a way that the others are not. I just feel like it's so one-sided. I mean, I feel like we can't talk to that the other side, on just the past, all those protests, the ceasefires and everyone else. And it's like, there's no conversation. I'm like, we're trying for the ceasefire, but it's not, it keeps, getting blocked.
Well, it goes back to what I said. Once you're invested in a certain way and a certain cause, it's very hard to walk that back. But I'm gonna put this out there. A lot of you pro-Palestinian supporters and protesters, a lot of you have had your faces covered. So it's not beyond the realm of possibility for you to actually stop what you're doing because nobody knows who you are just yet. So if you walk it back and you understand that you're on the wrong side of history, and I'm not saying that the plight of the Palestinian people is not a real, genuine, and authentic one, and we can get into that, but you're not so invested in your cause if you have not shown your face to the world. So you can take the kifaya off. You can erase those posts from your Instagram. You can turn over a new type of person that you know you want to be now that you know a little bit of the truth. Now, that's not to say that, Israel and the Jewish people are 100%, you know, innocent of everything over the course of however many years, but we are definitely not the barbaric terrorists that they paint us out to be, and we are not an apartheid state. And I say
So
we.
really fast, I want you to give a definition of that, because that's this is the thing that I keep hearing, and I don't know if people understand what that means.
Okay,
Or you?
apartheid. I mean,
So,
from a hood perspective, or just from a street definition,
whatever,
apartheid
right?
apartheid is basically when you are of a different ethnic culture, creed, or religion with living within the same society as others that might be the dominant race, religion, or creed of the area in which your rights are restricted simply because of the difference of your ethnic, race, creed, color, or religion. For example, there are 2 million Arab Israelis living in Israel right now with every single same right as every Israeli person. There is nobody that is restricted from any of the rights that Israel has to offer unless you have some sort of criminal record or restriction against you yourself for who you are because of something that you did where you do not earn the right to have those rights. So apartheid, no, 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 no.
Thank
This
you.
is something. This is
That
something
has,
that has been made up for years because people don't go to Israel. They are betting on that you will not go there if you know that it's an apartheid state and it takes part in genocidal tactics and they kill even their own hostages. Would you want to go there? No. So how would you even see for yourself? But thank God for social media and 5G technology and 4K quality film because you could see it with your own eyes.
right. When was the last time you were there? Well, have you been there?
I have not been there.
You have not been there?
No, I have not.
You need to go.
Dude, I have been invited by, I would say, no less than 100 different families for me to go and stay there.
Oh
I
my,
have been I've been so busy with my career. Then I bought a house and I fixed it up. And then my father got some like real serious medical issues. And both him and my mother are both over 70. So it's kind of like if I'm not there to kind of, help with the heavy lifting, like God forbid I went to Israel and something happened while I
yeah.
was there. So I will go. I need to go. I actually am thinking about doing an aliyah to Israel and possibly moving there eventually because it's getting a little weird over here in the States. And with the more and more divisiveness that goes on, it feels less and less. And I hate to say it like that because I am America first, but it's feeling less and less like a place that I really feel prideful calling home,
Right. Makes sense.
especially with what's being allowed. How are you going to allow the Lincoln Memorial to be vandalized, the Golden Gate Bridge to be shut down,
That was
the
yesterday.
Brook, the Brooklyn Bridge to be shut down simultaneously?
And professors are, sending out emails. I sent it to you yesterday. I was just like canceling class because they want to go do a protest. But I'm like, what about the Jewish students that are in there again? And it's just, I just feel like there's just this. Kids are very feeling not secure and not safe in their own educational environment, which is very scary because that's where you learn, and that's
Okay,
where you.
so you're on the West Coast, right?
Yeah.
So it's the same principle as gang mentality. So obviously the Bloods and the Crips, originated out on the West Coast. And not to say that they prey on the vulnerable, but they were started as a community activist type of program and a way to kind of police their own community. So a lot of these kids these days are very out of touch with any sort of reality because they are very into seeing things on a screen rather than outside touching the grass and actually living life the way we did when we were kids. And who knows if we had access to that, we'd probably be the same exact way, but we're a product of our environment, but we're here. So what do we do about it? So these people are looking for a cause to belong. They're looking for a sense of togetherness and brotherhood and sisterhood and seeing different things over the course of history and the civil rights movement, and they think that this is their chance, that this is how we could be a part of history. And you know what, it's pretty cool too because everyone's doing it, and it's like, fuck the Jews, who really cares, and it's that problem because they don't know that we were the refugees, we were the victims, we were murdered and chased and tormented and terrorized for hundreds and thousands of years by every people known to man.
Right.
We are this shade because of all the things that have happened to us before the Inquisition, the Spanish exile, the pogroms of the 1880s to 1920s, the violent massacres and raids, and raping and pillaging of all of our towns and the stripping of our rights and the doctrines that were put to restrict us from movements or jobs that we can hold. So people just basically raped us, disgraced us, and then and just left us to fend for ourselves. And that's why we had to migrate to the land of Judea, Samaria, Israel, which is our ancestral homeland, because nobody wanted us. I mean,
Right.
listen, I know I'm pretty cool. I don't know about you, but I mean, people can't get along with me. And I know I'm not the typical Jew, but there's a lot of cool ones like us out there. We're not all rabbis that want to drink the blood of Christian babies, and
Right.
that's a lie.
I
And
mean,
that's a lie too, by the way, just in case you dickheads
right.
believe.
Well, I think there's that confusion because when Israel became a state, so then there's like that confusion, that date, right? Of like, well, that's when he took the land. And so there, again, there's that misinformation when it was there thousands of years prior.
Right. I mean, so
Just little things like that.
I put out a post where I'm doing it in hip hop format, where I'm kind of giving you like a play by play, of history, where I don't, get specific in the dates. I mean, a couple of them I do, but I say, I'm JopauL the Zionist. I'm Israel Hayashit, Hammer of Judea, like Yehuda Maccabeus. Instead of peacetime, a green line, they chose violence. Okay, so in 1947, I believe it was Resolution 181, which is basically the partition of the British Mandate, which basically was kind of mapping out where the nation of Palestine would be and where Israel would be. In 1917, when the Balfour Declaration was passed, that was passed by the British, and the British weren't in control of that area yet. The Ottoman Empire was still in control of historic Palestine. When you hear the word Palestine, it's not an actual place; it's a region, known as like northern Judea, Samaria, a little tip of Lebanon, little tip of Syria, little tip of Jordan. But for the most part, it's a region. It's not an actual place. It's like me saying, like, yeah, I'm Tri-Stadium. I'm Staten Island from New York, so not going to rep Tri-Stadium, but I understand what they're referring to. So when 1947 happened and Israel is on the verge of declaring its independence, you had a whole bunch of the Arab community as well as the Palestinians, and it's hard for me to say Palestinians because I don't know when they started identifying as Palestinians, because right after 1922, when the Ottoman Empire fell, Ottomans were Turks. So were they Turkish Ottomanians? Were they Turkish Ottoman Palestinians? Were they, I don't know. It's so I don't know when they actually started referring to themselves as Palestinians. I mean, the general consensus is 1890 when I believe his name is escaping me right now, but Al Khomeini, I believe it is. But either way, that's neither here nor there. When the Jews had no place to go, the only place that seemed logical, Israel. That's where we're from. That's where we're gonna go. It's not like they just made it up in their heads, like, we've never been to Israel. Let's go there. It was literally out of necessity. And now for people that are in school, the definition of imperialism and colonialism does not describe what the Jews actually did. I feel like there's a grave misconception, like the Jews stormed Palestine like William Wallace in Braveheart, and like with swords, kicking people out of their houses and saying, you know what, I want that house, and kicking people out and saying, that's mine. This did not happen. So the definition of imperialism and colonialism has some sort of economic expansion attached to the greater picture. Like if Britain was going to be an imperialistic ruler of those lands, which it's not really clear if they were or not. They certainly took over, and they did declare that the Jews have a right to settle in Palestine. The only reason why the Palestinian people were mad is because they don't like Jews. I don't know if they just don't like Jews. They don't
Right.
want to have anything to do with the Jews. The fact that there was a deal on the table for the land that they lived in, but they didn't own. Yeah, they might have owned their property, but it's like me saying, like going outside right now and saying, you can't park in front of my house because I own this land. No, the city owns this land. And who owns the city? America owns this city. So I can't fight for land that I really technically don't own. But that's not to say that I don't have a right to say that, I do have a right to be here just as much as you do, which they do. Nobody's saying that. But can we share it a little bit? I mean, we really have no other place to go. There's 22 other Muslim nations that are surrounding this little tiny speck called Israel. And coincidentally, the Egyptians, the Lebanese, the Syrians, the Jordanians, the Iraqis, the Iranis, and Yemen, nobody wants to help the Palestinians and take them in.
Yeah.
Why should Israel? Now, I'm not saying that I'm happy about the situation that's going on in Gaza at all, because anytime there's loss of life, it is a tragedy. But why should the one nation that was attacked by the other be the ones to actually administer and handle the aid until after? Like, I mean, when there's reconstruction, there's reconstruction. And when there's retribution that needs to be paid, restitution that needs to be paid, obviously Israel is going to rebuild Gaza. But why haven't the other nations stepped up?
Good question.
Just makes you wonder.
Thinking. I mean, this is exactly what I'm talking about, doing more research and understanding more of the situation versus just seeing something and just going with it. And like, that's just it, and not understanding more about the culture, more about the people, understanding that there is more to it than just what's being said.
Right. And there's more to it than just TikTok clips and YouTube clips. Like, there are books about the conflict. There are great debates about the conflict. There's a professor, Benny Morris, who's probably looked at as probably the number one. He's coined the phrase "new historian" because it's relatively new. It's not ancient history, but it's new history. So he's written several books on the conflict, has a real firm grasp understanding. It's not so one-sided where you can say, oh, he's championing for the Israelis and the Jews, but you're also going to find the opposition side. Like if you watch the documentary about the 48 war, the 1967 war, up until the first Intifada, and the second Intifada on Al Jazeera TV or the Al Jazeera network that actually like produced the documentary, and it's hard to watch because it's in different languages and you have to read all the subtitles from all the different people. So it's like unless you're standing there like this, it's like you're gonna lose a lot. But you can see where different perspectives, come into play. And, history is written by the side of the winners. But at the same time, unless there was complete annihilation or obliteration of the enemy, they're still going to contribute to the story exactly what happened. So it's not like there's a false sense of history or false facts that are out there, making Israel look like they are, the absolute superior, dominant, totally ethical, moral, non-barbaric. It's war. There's
Right.
some shit that's gonna happen. People are fucked up.
Right.
You're going to have rogue people that do some fucked up shit, and the entire military is not to be held accountable for a few isolated incidents. But when you see Hamas breaking through Israel's border and systematically ethnically cleansing 12 different communities in all of the kibbutz, by going right to the the um the officer that's in control of monitoring the whole area, and then systematically going house to house and assassinating and executing people. Like, that's the barbaric things that people accuse Israel of doing, but yet Hamas videoed it, live
Right.
streamed it to the world, and
100%.
then people said, "Oh no, that's like Hollywood. Israel's doing that." It's mind-boggling. But once you're vested on one side, very, very hard to walk it back, especially when your identity is known. So that's what I'm saying. You pro-Palestinians that you have your faces covered, that people don't know who you are, come on over to the right side of history. We'll let you in, but you got to come now.
Well, I've got to tell you, this has been wonderful to have you, and I can't believe it's 30 minutes already.
Has it? Holy shit.
Yes.
I'm sorry.
No, this has been great. So I want to just really quickly, how can people find you? Because I really want to make sure that if you want to learn more, because you're posting every day. That's how I found you.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah,
I'm glad you found me, because I've seen unity to the Jewish people like I've never seen before, and it's what actually encourages me and gives me strength to move forward, because it's a very, very dark, cloudy world out there. So when I see a couple of rays of sunshine, poke through, and people like you reach out to me, and are learning and have the right questions, or have the wherewithal to ask me what are the right questions to ask, that makes it all worth it. But you can
Right.
find me social media at I am JopauL. That's IAMJOPAUL. You can also check me out at the Verified Podcast on my YouTube channel. But the easiest way is just go to my Instagram. All my links are there. You can learn all about the history that I have. I'll probably be putting subscriptions out there where you could probably pay me to teach you about history. But I don't know. I don't really do it for that. I do it because the information's priceless. And if you learn our history, you learn that we were the original refugees. We were the victims. And if people knew the shit that we went through, maybe they'd stop fucking picking on us.
Right.
That's all I got to say.
Right. Well,
I'm
it's great
JopauL. I love you.
It was great. Thank you so much.
No problem. Thank you for having me. And anytime you want to do it again, you just let
Oh,
me know.
we 100%. We're
And
definitely.
I'd love to speak to your kids one day. If I can, I'll curb the cursing.
Oh,
I won't do anything
yeah,
like that.
no, you know what? I really actually, yeah, I was gonna ask because I have a kid that is an amazing rapper, but yet I have brought in all these people and he just won't follow any rules. He's like me. Like,
But, you're out on
so
the West Coast. Do you know who Layla Steinberg is?
no, I'll write that down. That's my middle
Okay,
name.
well, I know the last name sounds like she's Jewish. She's not, but she's really, really cool. She's the one who actually kind of discovered Tupac, and I know that she's on the West Coast, and she has some emerging rapper programs that maybe he or she could get involved
Right.
in. But yeah, we'll talk about that offline. But yeah, anytime you want, reach out, and we could do it again, and I'd be happy to help however I can.
Perfect. Okay, so I just hit pause and stop, right? That's it. I don't want to
That's
delete this whole thing.
That's it. I mean, if I were you, I would do like a little sign off, hey guys, this is Vanessa. This has been parenting, podcasting, and we've been talking with JopauL, the absolute greatest human being on the planet. Just me, shameless plug, real fast.
You know what, Aaron? You could just plug that in, and he just.
There you go. But
Thank you for
thank you so much. Thank
listening.
you so much for
Thank
having
you for
me, and
listening
I will see you
to
there.
this amazing JopauL.
Listen, keep fighting the good fight. You enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you. You too.
Thank you for listening to Parenting with Vanessa Colon. And if you have any questions about your child or want to hear other tips, please go to Vanessa's website, vanessacolon.com at VANESSAKAHLON.com or email colonfamilyservices@gmail.com.